The rain had been falling for hours, a cold, relentless curtain drumming against windshields and storefronts. It was one of those nights when even the city itself seemed tired, its lights dulled, its streets empty, its people hurrying home to warmth and shelter. But under an old bus stop sign at the edge of Chicago's South Side, a little girl sat cross-legged on the wet concrete, shivering inside a torn denim jacket 2 sizes too big for her. Her name was Leela Green, and she was only 11. She held a cardboard sign that read in shaky handwriting, "Hungry, but still hopeful." Her small hands clutched a paperback book, its edges swollen from rain. She wasn't begging tonight. She was reading by the yellow glow of a flickering streetlight, mouthing each word like it was a secret spell keeping her alive. The book was missing its cover, but she knew it by heart. Charlotte's Web. Her mother used to read it to her before the coughing got bad. That was months ago, before the eviction, before the hospital, before the silence that followed. Now, the only voice Leela heard most nights was the hum of traffic and the whisper of pages. "Hey there, my wonderful family and friends. Welcome back." If you're ready to dive into today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. I love seeing where everyone's watching. And guess what? There's another amazing story coming your way tomorrow. One you definitely don't want to miss. Alright then, let's get started. Across town, in a glass tower overlooking the same wet city, Mike Ward, 39, CEO of Ward Technologies, scrolled through sales reports on his tablet while his driver waited outside his office. He had everything people chased their whole lives: wealth, power, influence, but tonight, he just felt tired. His assistant had reminded him of his daughter's school play again, but he'd already missed it. He told himself it was worth it. Everything he did was for her, or so he liked to believe. He slipped on his charcoal overcoat, nodded to his driver, and said, "Take the long way. I need air." The car purred through rain-slick streets. Mike stared out the tinted window, watching the blurred lights of passing stores and diners. He thought of his daughter, Grace, 13, who barely spoke to him anymore. She said he was always working, and maybe she was right. When the car slowed for a red light, Mike's eyes caught a shape under the bus stop across the street. A little girl, soaked, hunched, holding a sign. Something in that small, stubborn figure pulled at him. Maybe it was the sign. Maybe it was how she looked, defiant and fragile at once. He hesitated, then spoke. "Stop the car." The driver blinked. "Sir?" I said stop. The SUV's to the curb. Mike lowered his window. Cold rain blew in. "Hey," he called softly. "You shouldn't be out here." The girl looked up, startled. Her eyes, gray with flecks of green, seemed far older than her face. "I'm fine," she said quickly, pulling her jacket tighter. "I'm just reading." He frowned. "It's freezing. You have somewhere to go?" She shook her head. "Not really." Mike sighed, glancing at the light that was about to turn green. Logic screamed at him to drive away. It wasn't his problem. But something in echo of his daughter's voice made him say, "Do you want something hot to eat?" She hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know," he said. "I want to." After a moment, she nodded. They drove to a 24-hour diner, its neon sign buzzing softly in the rain. Mike told the driver to wait outside. Inside, the warmth hit like a hug. The waitress, a tired woman named Marge, eyed them with curiosity. A millionaire in a tailored coat and a little girl dripping rainwater on the linoleum. "Sit wherever you want," she said slowly. Leela slid into a booth, clutching her soaked book. She looked around like she'd stepped into another world. Mike handed her a menu. "Order anything." Her eyes widened. "Anything?" He smiled. "Anything." After a long pause, she said, "Pancakes, with chocolate chips, and maybe orange juice." "Good choice," he said. "You like reading?" She nodded, holding up the book shyly. "It's about a spider and a pig. They become friends, even though the world says they shouldn't." "That's a good story," he said softly. "Do you read a lot?" "When I can find books," she said. "Sometimes the library lady lets me stay even after closing." Mike's chest tightened. "Where's your family?" She looked down at her pancakes when they arrived. "My mom's gone. My dad left a long time ago." "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "It's okay." She replied with a small smile. I still have my words. He frowned slightly. Your words? She nodded. Yeah, words don't leave. People do. So I keep the ones that help. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain outside softened. The smell of syrup and coffee filled the air. Then Mike said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Her eyes lit up. A teacher, but not the normal kind. I want to teach kids who can't go to school. Like me. Something inside Mike shifted like the quiet snap of a frozen branch finally thawing. His daughter had stopped talking about dreams months ago. And here was this child, alone in the rain, still believing in them. He cleared his throat. Do you mind if I give you something? She looked cautious. If it's money, I don't take much. He chuckled softly. Not money. He tore a sheet from his leather notebook and wrote an address. That's a bookstore near here. Tell them Mike Ward sent you. You can pick any book you want anytime. Her mouth fell open. Any book? He nodded. Consider it a lifetime pass. For the first time, she grinned. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Mike felt his throat tighten. You deserve it. When they walked outside again, the rain had stopped. The clouds were thinning, revealing a few shy stars. The driver opened the door, but Leela hesitated. Thank you, Mr. Mike, he said. Thank you, Mr. Mike. She smiled. Most people don't stop. He paused, then asked, why do you think I did? She thought for a moment, then said softly, maybe because you forgot what kindness feels like, and your heart wanted to remember. He froze. Before he could speak, she stepped back into the streetlight, waved, and disappeared down the block. Her book pressed to her chest. Mike stood there for a long time, the paper sign hungry, but still hopeful, flickering in his mind. Then he whispered to himself, forgot what kindness feels like. He looked up at the night sky and exhaled a long, unsteady breath. The city hummed around him, alive and uncaring. But for the first time in years, he felt something different. Not power, not pride. Something smaller, something human. Sometimes the people with the least remind us of what we've lost. And if stories like this remind you that kindness still matters, don't scroll past. Subscribe, share, and carry this one forward. Because one moment, one word, can still change everything. Morning light cut through the gray skyline of Chicago, bouncing off glass towers and polished steel. Inside one of them, Mike Ward stood before a wall of windows, coffee in hand, staring at the city below. He could still hear her voice, maybe because you forgot what kindness feels like, and your heart wanted to remember. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that little girl's face half hidden behind rain and courage. He tried to shake it off. There were meetings to run, deals to sign, investors to please. But for the first time in years, the work felt hollow. Mike's office was a study in perfection, floor to ceiling glass, minimalist decor, the kind of space that said control. He flipped through quarterly reports, but his focus wandered. When his assistant, Jenna, knocked and entered with her tablet, he barely noticed. Sir, the Seattle investors confirmed for next week, she said briskly. Also, Grace's school called. They need a parent signature for the field trip. Mike blinked. I'll have her mother handle it, sir. Mrs. Ward still oversees with the charity program. Right. The separation. Another thing he'd buried under schedules. He sighed. I'll stop by Grace's school later. Jenna hesitated. She'd like that, sir. He glanced up, surprised by the warmth in her tone, then nodded. Thanks. Across the city, Leela Green sat on a bench behind the public library, legs tucked beneath her, nibbling on a stale muffin. The bookstore address Mike had given her was folded carefully inside her pocket, her new treasure. She hadn't dared go yet. People didn't just give things like that. Not to her, but the thought of any book you want. Any time kept her warm through the night. She pulled the address out again, tracing the letters with her finger. Maybe today, she whispered. Before she could move, a security guard spotted her. Hey, kid, you can't sit back here. She stood quickly. Sorry, sir. Library opens at 9, he said, voice softer now. You okay? I'm fine, she said automatically. Just waiting for the rain to stop. He looked at the clear sky, puzzled. But let her be. Meanwhile, Grace Ward sat at her private school cafeteria, earbuds in, pushing food around her tray. Her friends chatted about ski trips and shopping, but Grace barely listened. Her father's empty chair at the school play last night still haunted her. He always promised he'd come. He never did. She opened her phone and scrolled through old messages. The last text from him was 2 weeks old. "Proud of you, kiddo. Busy week, but we'll hang soon." She sighed and typed a reply she knew he wouldn't see for hours. It's always a busy week. By noon, Mike's SUV rolled through the city's south side again. The same streets he'd ignored for years suddenly looked sharper, cracked sidewalks, boarded windows, faces hardened by survival. He told his driver to slow near the old bus stop. It was empty. The cardboard sign was gone. He felt a strange ache, relief mixed with worry. "Where are you, kid?" He asked around at a nearby diner. The waitress, Marge, recognized his description. "Little thing? Reads a lot?" "Yeah. She's been around a few nights. Sweet kid. Doesn't ask for much. Do you know where she stays?" he asked. She shook her head. "Here, there. Under the bridge sometimes. Look, she's harmless, but she's one of dozens like her. You can't save 'em all." Mike nodded. But her words sat wrong with him. He didn't want to save anyone. He just couldn't forget that spark, the way she'd spoken like she'd seen through him that evening. Leela finally gathered her courage. She followed the address to a small corner bookstore called The Lantern Shelf. It was the kind of place that smelled like dust and stories. The bell jingled as she stepped in. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with silver hair tied in a bun. "Can I help you, sweetheart?" Leela held up the note. "Mr. Mike Ward said I could come." The woman's eyes softened instantly. "Ah, so you're the little bookworm he told me about. He called this morning." Leela's mouth fell open. "He called? He said you could pick any book, anytime. Said you'd know what to do with them." Leela blinked rapidly. Can I really?" "Go on, dear," the woman said with a smile. "The shelves are yours." Leela walked slowly between the aisles, fingertips brushing over spines. Anne of Green Gables, The Secret Garden, To Kill a Mockingbird. She stopped at a shelf labeled Children's Classics and picked up a worn copy of Little Women. Her hands trembled. "It's perfect," she whispered. When she brought it to the counter, the woman wrapped it gently. "That one's special." "So are you." Leela hugged the book to her chest. "Thank you." That night, Mike sat in his office again, staring at a framed photo of his daughter. He picked up his phone, hesitated, then called the bookstore. "Did she come?" he asked quietly. "Yes," the woman replied. "She chose Little Women. You should have seen her face." He smiled faintly. "Thank you, Mr. Ward," she said softly. "That girl needed more than a book. She needed to be seen. You gave her that." When he hung up, he sat back, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Needed to be seen. He thought of Grace, of how long it had been since he'd really looked at his own daughter. The next day, he showed up at Grace's school unannounced. She was in the art room, headphones on, sketching absent-mindedly. When she looked up and saw him in the doorway, surprise flickered, then caution. "Dad?" "Hey, kiddo," he said gently. "Thought I'd take you to lunch." Her eyes narrowed. "Since when?" "Since today." She hesitated, then shrugged. "Okay. But just fries. I've got rehearsal." They drove in silence for a while. Mike glanced at her and realized with a pang that she looked older than 13, guarded, tired. "Grace," he began, "I met someone yesterday. A girl. She reminded me a lot of you." She raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? What's her name?" "Leela. She's had it rough, but she's smart. Brave." Grace studied him. "You? Talking to some random kid? That's new." He chuckled softly. "Yeah." She said something that stuck with me. "What's that?" He looked out the window. "That maybe I forgot what kindness feels like." Grace frowned. "You? Forget kindness? You literally run charities." He nodded. "Yeah, but that's money, not kindness. They're not the same." Grace went quiet. Staring out the window, maybe for the first time, she saw him not as the busy, unreachable father, but as a man trying to find his way back. Later that night, rain returned, soft and rhythmic. Leela sat in her usual spot beneath the overpass, wrapped in a donated blanket. reading Little Women by flashlight. When she reached a part where Joe March says, "I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship," she smiled through tears. "Me too," she whispered, across the city. Mike scrolled through news headlines but couldn't focus. He put down his phone, stood at the window, and whispered into the glass reflection, "I'm learning too. Kid, if you had all the comfort in the world, but your heart felt empty, would you have stopped that night?" The next Saturday, sunlight poured through the Chicago skyline for the first time in weeks. The storm clouds were gone, and the city felt alive again, cleaner, louder, somehow renewed. But for Mike Ward, something else was different too. The world looked sharper now, not just a blur of meetings and profit margins. He'd spent his week working as usual, deals, deadlines, polite smiles, yet his mind kept drifting back to one face, Leela, the girl with the sign that said hungry, but still hopeful. He told himself their encounter was chance, a brief moment of kindness. Nothing more. But the truth was, she had cracked something open in him that he didn't know how to close. That morning, Mike found himself driving again through the South Side, past graffiti-painted walls and half-boarded shops. His driver didn't even ask this time. He just slowed near the old bus stop, empty. Again. Mike sighed, disappointment heavy in his chest. He thought maybe she'd be nearby, maybe reading on a bench like before, but as they rounded the next corner, he spotted a familiar flash of movement, a small figure outside the lantern shelf bookstore, holding a stack of worn paperbacks in her arms. "Stop here," he said quickly. The SUV pulled up beside the curb. Mike stepped out, adjusting his jacket. Leela turned, eyes widening. "Mr. Mike?" He smiled faintly. "You remember me?" Her grin was instant. "Of course. You're the guy who gave me the golden ticket," he chuckled. "Golden ticket? You know, the bookstore thing. Like Willy Wonka, but for books," Mike laughed, shaking his head. "I like that." She looked different in the daylight, not as fragile, more alive. There was color in her cheeks and confidence in her voice. "Did you come for more books too?" She teased. "Not today," he said. "I wanted to see how you were doing." Leela shrugged. "Still reading, still hoping." Something in that simple answer made his chest ache again. They walked together toward the park across the street. Mike bought her a pretzel from a vendor. She took it politely but didn't eat right away. "Why are you being so nice to me?" she asked suddenly. He paused. "Because I can. Lots of people can," she said. "But they don't." He looked at her, stunned by the honesty in her tone. "You're right." She smiled, as if forgiving him for every adult who had ever turned away. They sat on a park bench under a wide oak tree. Pigeons strutted around their feet, the air warm with the scent of roasted nuts and distant traffic. Leela turned to him. "You said you have a daughter, right?" "Yes." "Grace, is she like me?" He smiled. "Not really. She has a home, a school, a phone glued to her hand." Leela laughed softly. "I'd like to meet her." Mike raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "So I can tell her she's lucky," Leela said, biting into her pretzel. "And maybe tell her to talk to you more. You look like you miss her." The words hit like a quiet bullet. Mike swallowed. "Yeah, I do." Later that afternoon, Mike drove back home, but the city felt smaller now, more personal. He stopped at a red light and caught sight of a mural painted on a brick wall. "Be kind, everyone's fighting something." He stared at it until the light turned green. That evening, Grace came home from a friend's house to find her father sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by takeout boxes. "Hey, stranger," she said cautiously. He smiled. "Hungry?" She eyed the pile. "You ordered half the menu." "I didn't know what you liked anymore," he admitted. Her face softened. "Still Thai noodles. Still too spicy." He laughed quietly. "Noted." They ate together. Awkwardly at first, then easier as conversation found its rhythm again. After a while, Grace asked, "So, what happened to you? You're different." Mike hesitated. "I met someone." Grace's eyebrow lifted. "A woman?" He chuckled. "A little girl, actually. Homeless. Smart as hell. Reminded me that being busy isn't the same as being good." Grace looked at him long and hard, then smiled faintly. You sound like one of those viral stories mom watches online. Maybe, he said. Except this one's not over yet. Meanwhile, across town, Leela sat at a library desk, flipping through Little Women. The librarian, Mrs. Campbell, passed by and smiled. You've been coming a lot lately. I like it here, Leela said softly. It's quiet. And books don't ask where you're from, Mrs. Campbell nodded kindly. You keep reading, sweetheart. The right stories can take you anywhere. I know, Leela said, eyes bright. That's the plan. The next week, Mike stopped by the lantern shelf again. Leela was there, reading on the floor beside a stack of history books. Hey, bookworm, he greeted. She looked up and beamed. Hey, Mr. Mike, I finished Little Women. It made me cry. That's how you know it's good, he said, crouching beside her. So, what's next? She held up a biography of Malala Yousafzai. She fought for girls' education. I want to do that someday, he nodded, impressed. You already are. In your own way. Her face lit up. Really? Really, he said. You're the bravest person I've met, she grinned, then tilted her head. You say that like you don't meet a lot of brave people. He hesitated. Maybe not the kind who fight with hope instead of money. For weeks, their unlikely friendship grew. Every Saturday, Mike would stop by the bookstore or the park, and they'd talk about books, about dreams, about how words could build bridges where money never could. Sometimes he brought her snacks. Other times, she brought him quotes scribbled on scraps of paper. One read, "You don't need to have everything to change something." He kept it folded in his wallet. One chilly afternoon, Mike brought Grace with him. This is weird, Grace said as they pulled into the south side. You sure this isn't dangerous? Not everything unfamiliar is dangerous, he said gently. When they reached the park, Leela was sitting under the same oak tree reading. When she looked up and saw them, her smile widened. You came back! Grace blinked. You're the kid Dad told me about. Leela nodded shyly. You must be Grace. The two studied each other for a moment, one in designer sneakers, the other barefoot in worn jeans. Then, unexpectedly, Grace sat beside her. What are you reading? Grace asked. Malala, Leela said, handing her the book. She's my hero. Grace flipped through the pages. You like her story? I like her courage, Leela said. She reminds me that you can lose everything and still not give up. Grace glanced at her father, then smiled faintly. You sound like him lately, Leela giggled. Then maybe he's learning something. Too, that day, as the three of them sat in the park, passersby slowed to look at Millionaire, his daughter, and a homeless girl sharing laughter and pretzels under a tree. Mike didn't care about the stares. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing. He was present. It didn't matter where they came from. It just mattered that they were there together. That night, as Mike tucked Grace in, she said quietly, Dad, I like her. She's real. He smiled. Yeah, she is. Grace hesitated. Do you think she'll be okay? He paused. I don't know yet, but I'm going to try to make sure. Across the city, Leela fell asleep with a full stomach and her book stuck safely beside her. Before drifting off, she whispered, Thank you, Mr. Mike, for seeing me. Have you ever met someone who reminded you what kindness truly means? Every weekend, Mike, Grace, and Leela met at the park or the bookstore. They talked about everything: books, dreams, fears, even jokes about which food was best for thinking pretzels. Leela said, because they're shaped like questions. Double quotes closing parenthesis. ID was simple, pure, human. And for a while, it stayed their secret. But secrets in a city like Chicago have short lives. That Saturday, Grace convinced her dad to let her post a photo. It was harmless, just the three of them under the oak tree, laughing, the skyline glowing behind them. Grace captioned it, Found the smartest girl I've ever met where I least expected it. She tagged her dad and added a heart emoji. She didn't expect the photo to spread, but it did. By morning, it had over 200,000 likes. By noon, headlines began to appear. Tech millionaire befriends homeless child, Chicago's real-life fairy tale. Who is Leela Green? The girl who stole a CEO's heart. Some comments were kind. This is what humanity looks like. Others weren't. PR stunt. Rich people always need attention. Probably staged. That poor kid's privacy is gone now. Mike's phone buzzed nonstop. His PR manager, Daniel, called first. Mike, we've got a situation, he said urgently. That photo's everywhere. Everyone's talking about the CEO and the street kid. Mike rubbed his temples. It's not a situation, Daniel. It's a friendship, yeah. But you know how people twist things. We need to get ahead of the story. Maybe an interview, no interviews, Mike said firmly. She's just a kid, then you need to stop seeing her. At least until this dies down. Mike hesitated. Not happening, Daniel sighed. You're risking your reputation, Mike. Investors are asking questions. People don't understand why a man like you is hanging around. Well, someone like her. Mike's voice went cold. Then maybe they should start. He hung up. That afternoon, he drove straight to the bookstore. The bell chimed as he stepped inside, but Leela wasn't there. The owner, the elderly woman with silver hair, looked worried. She was here earlier, she said softly. But when she saw the news on my TV, she panicked. Said she didn't want to cause you trouble. Mike's heart sank. Did she say where she was going? Back to the bridge, I think. Said that's the only place people leave her alone. He turned immediately for the door. The sky had turned gray again. The kind of color that sits heavy on your chest. Under the bridge near 39th Street, Mike found her curled under a torn blanket, hugging her books like they were the only safe things left in the world. Leela, he called softly. She looked up, startled. You shouldn't be here, she said quickly. People are saying stuff. Bad stuff. I didn't mean to make trouble. He knelt beside her. Hey, look at me. None of this is your fault. They think you're lying, she said, voice cracking. They think I'm fake. Mike exhaled shakily. Let them think what they want. We know the truth. Tears pooled in her eyes. You're not mad? Mad? He smiled faintly. You gave me something no one else could. My daughter talks to me again because of you. My heart feels alive again because of you. I could never be mad. Her shoulders trembled. I don't want to disappear again. He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a small envelope. You won't. I promise. Inside was a laminated library card with her name printed neatly. Leela Green. Her breath caught. You got me a library card? He nodded. You said words don't leave. I wanted to make sure they never do. She threw her arms around him without hesitation. For a long time, he just held her, the city noise fading into something distant and kind, but the story didn't fade. If anything, it grew louder. By Monday, reporters camped outside Ward Technologies headquarters. Camera crews staked out the park. Grace's school friends whispered and pointed at a tea lunch. Grace overheard two classmates snickering. Her dad's rescuing some street kid now, probably guilt money. Rich people love playing hero. Grace slammed her tray down. You don't know anything about her. They rolled their eyes. Relax. It's just a meme. Grace stood up, trembling with anger. She's not a meme. She's a person. And she's 10 times braver than anyone in the school. When she stormed out, her heart pounded with a new kind of pride and protectiveness. That evening, Mike sat in his office, watching the city lights blink below. He'd received dozens of emails, some from strangers thanking him, some from critics accusing him of virtue signaling. But one email stopped him cold. It was from a school counselor he'd never met. If the girl in those photos is really homeless, I can help. There are outreach programs, shelters, education grants. She deserves a future. Mike read the message twice. Then he smiled. The next morning, he drove with Grace to the south side. They found Leela near the bridge again, reading the diary of Anne Frank. When she saw them, she closed the book carefully. Hey, she said quietly. You didn't give up on me. Mike smiled. I told you. I'm not going anywhere. He crouched down to her level. There's a counselor who wants to help, real help. You'd get a safe place. School, meals, books, everything. You wouldn't have to fight so hard anymore. Leela looked uncertain. I don't want to go if it means losing you and Grace. Grace knelt beside her. You're not losing us. You're gaining more people who care. Leela hesitated, eyes darting between them. What if they don't want me there? What if I don't fit? Mike smiled gently. Kid, you've been fitting in with my world since the day we met. Trust me, you'll fit anywhere. She bit her lip. What about the news people? We'll tell them the truth, he said. That friendship doesn't need permission. Later that week, the three of them appeared together on a small local news segment, not a PR stunt. Just a simple interview in the bookstore where it all began. The reporter asked, Mr. Ward, what made you stop that night? Mike glanced at Leela and said softly, because sometimes you don't need a reason to do the right thing. You just need to remember how. The reporter turned to Leela. And what would you say to others who might be struggling like you were? Leela smiled shyly. Don't stop dreaming. Even if you have nothing, keep your hope. It's the only thing people can take. When the segment aired, it went viral again, but this time, the comments were different. This gave me faith in humanity again. Real kindness still exists. More Mikes, more Leelas, more Graces. Afterward, as they left the studio, Grace grabbed Leela's hand. You're kind of famous now. Leela laughed. That's weird. I just wanted to read books. Mike looked at them, his daughter and the girl who'd changed everything, and felt something he hadn't in years. Peace. He placed a hand on both their shoulders. Come on, he said. Let's go celebrate. Pancakes. Just like the first night. Leela grinned. With chocolate chips? Always, he said. That night, they sat in the same diner where it had all begun. Same booth. Same waitress. Different hearts. The world outside was still noisy and cold. But inside that little bubble of warmth and syrup, there was laughter, forgiveness, and something stronger than both: connection. If the whole world doubted your kindness, would you still choose to be kind? Spring came early that year. Chicago's skyline glowed in gold and pink as the wind finally softened, and the city's heartbeat shifted from survival to renewal. For the first time in her life, Leela Green woke up to sunlight streaming through a window instead of rain dripping through a bridge. The soft hum of morning traffic outside was replaced by birdsong, and for the first time in a long time she felt safe. She sat up slowly, eyes adjusting to the light. Her new room wasn't big, but it was hers. A bookshelf, a small desk, a donated laptop, and a bulletin board filled with handwritten notes and doodles from Grace Ward. Dotted to the center of it, pinned carefully, was a quote scribbled in Grace's handwriting. Kindness is the language hearts remember. Leela smiled. That's true, she whispered downstairs. The sound of voices and laughter filled the breakfast room. Mike stood by the counter, pouring coffee, watching Grace teach Leela how to make pancakes. Flour dusted the counter. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and sunlight. Too many chocolate chips, Mike teased. Grace smirked. No such thing. Leela giggled. It's tradition now. Mike raised his mug in mock surrender. All right then. Chef's rule. For a moment, the three of them looked like a family. No headlines, no differences, no walls. Just people connected by choice, not circumstance. After breakfast, Mike grabbed his jacket. Big day today, he said with a grin. Leela tilted her head. Big day? He winked. You'll see. The drive took them downtown, past the familiar bus stop where everything began. The cardboard sign was gone, but Leela still looked out the window, eyes soft. I used to sit there, she murmured. I know, Mike said quietly. That's why we're starting here. When they parked, Leela gasped. A banner stretched across the side of a restored community building. It read, The Green Center for Hope and Education, a place where every child's story deserves a new chapter. Leela turned to him, speechless. My name. Mike smiled. Ours. Together. You inspired it. Grace grinned. Dad's been working on it for months. Surprise! Tears filled Leela's eyes as she took in the sight children playing on the steps, a mural of books and open hands painted on the walls, teachers greeting families at the door. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's yours, Mike said. A learning center, free tutoring, books, classes, for kids who don't get the chances they should. Leela blinked rapidly. You did this for me? He shook his head. No, you did this for us. You reminded me what matters. She flung her arms around him, sobbing softly. Grace joined in, their laughter and tears blurring together in the morning light. Weeks later, the Green Center opened officially. News cameras returned, but this time, no one called it a stunt. The story had already changed people. Business owners offered scholarships. Volunteers lined up, donations poured in. When Leela stepped up to the podium for her speech, she looked down at the crowd, rows of children, families, teachers, and at the front, Mike and Grace smiling proudly. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. A long time ago, I sat on a street corner with nothing but a book. I thought hope was something only lucky people could afford. But then someone stopped, not because he had to, but because he cared. And he didn't give me money or things. He gave me a chance. So if you ever see someone sitting in the rain, don't just walk by. Maybe they're not asking for help. Maybe they're waiting to remind you of who you are. The hall erupted in applause. Mike wiped his eyes. Grace clapped until her palms hurt. For the first time, Leela felt not like a girl the world had forgotten, but like someone who belonged to it. Later that evening, when the guests had gone, Mike stood outside the center, watching the sunset burn over the lake. Grace joined him, holding 2 cups of cocoa. You did good, Dad, he smiled. We did good. She leaned on his arm. Mom would have liked this. He nodded softly. Yeah, I think so too. They watched as Leela helped clean up inside, laughing with volunteers. Grace said quietly, you know, she's not just her story anymore. She's ours. Mike smiled faintly. No, she's everyone's. The months that followed brought change for all of them. Leela enrolled in school officially, top of her class. Grace volunteered at the center every weekend, helping younger kids read. And Mike? He began spending less time in boardrooms and more time building projects that actually mattered. He sold one of his penthouses and funneled the proceeds into scholarships. When investors questioned his priorities, he smiled and said, legacy isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in people. The quote made headlines. But this time, he didn't care about press or profit. He cared about purpose. One afternoon, months later, he stopped by the old bridge again. The city was alive, vendors, laughter, kids playing hopscotch. The once empty underpass had been cleaned and turned into a small reading space with benches and bookshelves. A plaque stood nearby, dedicated to every dreamer who once waited under this bridge. You're not forgotten. Leela Green Foundation. Mike sat for a while, listening to the laughter of children echoing through the streets. And in the soft hum of life, he heard her words again. Maybe because you forgot what kindness feels like, and your heart wanted to remember. He smiled. I remembered, kid. I really did. That night, he hosted a quiet dinner at home for the 2 girls. After dessert, Leela pulled a small folded paper from her pocket. I wrote something for you, she said shyly. Mike unfolded it. Inside, in neat handwriting, was a quote, kindness doesn't ask for applause. It simply keeps shining until someone else sees the light. He looked up, eyes wet. Did you write this? Leela smiled. You taught me how. He laughed softly. No, Leela, you taught me. As the night wound down, Grace curled up on the couch beside them, and Leela leaned against her shoulder. Mike watched him, his daughter by blood and his daughter by choice, and thought about how strange and beautiful life was. Sometimes you build an empire and feel empty. Sometimes you stop for a stranger and find your soul again. Weeks later, a reporter wrote, Mike Ward was once known for innovation in technology. Now, he's known for something rarer, innovation in humanity. But Mike never read the article. He didn't need to. His proof was already there in every smile that passed through the doors of the Green Center. In every child clutching a book they once thought they'd never own. And in every heart that dared to remember kindness again. The story of a millionaire and a homeless girl became more than news. It became a movement. And in a city that once looked away, people began stopping more often at lights, at corners, at moments of choice, realizing that sometimes the smallest act of compassion can rewrite an entire life. As the final scene fades, Leela narrates softly, I used to think hope was something you had to find. But maybe hope is what happens when someone decides to stop long enough to listen, long enough to care, long enough to remember that kindness isn't lost. It's just waiting. Would you stop if kindness called your name? If this story reminded you to look twice, to care more, don't let it end here. Like, share, And subscribe because every act of kindness starts with one simple word. Stop.
Thank you for watching all the way through. If this story moved you, the next one will surprise you in ways you won't expect. Go ahead and click the video on your screen. Your next story awaits.